Welcome back to the YouTube, guys. Doghouse Chats episode 4, maybe.
6.
Previously, we weren't doing these purely as long-form videos. We were just cutting them up as bites, but we were recommended to put the whole chat on as a long-form video. We've put a few on YouTube, and you guys have really enjoyed them. So we're going to try to make them more of the YouTube long-form format-based stuff for you guys that like the long chat. So here we are again. Joe Jeffrey, Matt Strong, as usual. And we got a new guest here, Big Rye Brambleby, the classic artiste himself. What's your bodybuilding nickname, man?
I don't know.
Everyone's got one.
I don't have one.
Need one. Like that. Oh, there's already been.
Like Michelangelo's David.
I was going to say there's already been an eagle. No, I know what. The Vitruvian Man. Yeah. Do you know
Most
that?
people in the bodybuilding industry won't clarify what that means.
Oh, it's quite a famous
Leonardo da Vinci sketch.
Yeah, so Da Vinci, the meeting of science and beauty, we could say.
I like that one.
Yeah,
And you are like a Renaissance man like Leonardo himself. So
the Vitruvian Man. I've actually got a necklace with a Vitruvian Man on it. Crafted to it if you want one to start.
Just so I can explain it. Mine just has got a spoon on it.
Yeah.
Niche joke there. Niche joke.
Anyway, we'll roll in straight away something that I want you guys' opinion on, because I was thinking about it earlier. I'll give the context. So maybe just like the way educators should behave on social media and what the audience of educators should look for in terms of credibility, because I saw two things today that really sparked this for me. I'm not going to name the two educators' names, tell you guys afterwards. But so firstly was one that was one of those sort of quote-based posts, you know, like I've been doing recently, and it had a statement like, studies show, blah, blah, blah. And someone said in the comments, can you cite the study? And the reply back to the individual was, no, I'm not going to spoon feed you. You can go and find it yourself, which was the first problematic thing. And the other problematic thing was I saw another, again, quote unquote, educator. You must have seen this post, making claims about drugs that you can take to increase your height, and literally said like up to a foot in height. Again, no citations made. And I personally think, I don't think you need to necessarily cite everything you say, but if you're going to make an evidence-based claim like studies show, or if you're going to say these drugs do this thing, you have to at least provide some form of evidence, whether that, even if that's just saying, I've seen this, so that the audience knows that it's just an anecdote, or if you're going to say studies show, there has to be evidence to support your claim in some degree, unless you make it clear that it's opinion. And for the people looking at that, if they're not providing any form of evidence to support the claim, I wouldn't write it off as nonsense, because it might be true. I would just be really dubious of it.
I mean, if I saw someone who gained a foot in height, I would like, show me the pictures. It's like, you don't need to say those dick pills. This is going to make your dick massive, right? I know they don't work because no one's died.
Because you tried them.
Tried them. No one's died from a 3 foot dick. Because if it worked, someone's going to spam it. They're going to just bosh those things in. So there's a reason no one's going around going, these things definitely work.
You know what the bodybuilding equivalent of that is?
What? So you've grown a foot in height?
No, trenbolone is 5 times more anabolic. Yeah. That'd be like, okay, so if I take a gram of test versus 5 grams of tren, I'm going to gain 5 times as much muscle.
It fails the real world test.
I did that the wrong way around. Like, so a gram of test versus 2... Fuck me.
That's right, 200
milligrams. No, yeah, versus 200 milligram of trenbolone, I'm going to gain the same amount of muscle. I mean, it fails the reality test.
Well, this is the thing. Like I say, no one's walking around just taking 200 mega tren, and no one's walking around with a 3 foot cock. So, I mean, it fails the test. But all jokes aside, I think educators, and I use that term loosely, online, it's gone from this, it's almost, to use another phallic analogy, it's a dick swinging contest.
It's dick obsessed.
It's dick obsessed today. It's almost like everyone's just saying, look how smart I am. And I actually made a meme of this a little while ago where I said, it was like, you know that guy sweating, pressing 2 buttons? It was, tell everyone how stupid they are, or say how smart I am. Yeah. So which one are you going to go for? That's an online educator. And I think they've missed the basic point of actually try and help people.
Yeah.
And I think if your start point is, I'm trying to help people, that's a good place to start as your role as an educator, if that's what you want to pigeonhole yourself. The second point is you haven't got all the answers. And that's certainly something I've been really cautious of as time's gone by, of saying, this is what I think the evidence says, and this is what the evidence maybe suggests. However, we can't sit there with a concrete answer and say, this is the thing, because we haven't got enough evidence most of the time.
I think the really insidious thing about it is that the only person that benefits here is the educator putting it out.
Yeah, it's a hook for sales. It's not like true unbiased education. It's more if that person is a coach trying to hook people in with a tagline that's going to get people to view the content.
The more insidious thing is it's presented with the mirage that the educator is doing it to help the person reading it.
Yeah.
Like, just make something. Well, there you go. Let's say somebody that is deficient in height, we'll say, is reading that. This combination of drugs is going to help you increase your height. And they think, thank you, I nearly said his name then, for putting out this free information. You know, it's so nice of you to do that. But then it's absolute nonsense that they've just made up. The person ends up spending money, wasting time, potentially negatively impacting their health and getting nowhere. But the person that's posted it has only claimed more notoriety for doing it. I think that's really terrible.
I think the industry itself is largely to blame for that, because we're all looking for that secret sauce. What's the thing I'm missing, like you say? Is it height?
That's
is
not
it
the industry. That's human nature, isn't it?
Of course.
You know.
But I think specifically within bodybuilding, everyone, the way marketing works is you're missing this one secret trick to muscle growth or whatever. And whenever someone sounds so confident they've got the answer, it can lure you in. And this is where I use the thing of, if someone says it depends, I don't know, it's not as sexy, but that person's usually someone I will trust.
Yeah.
That's the person I'll listen to and go, that's the thing. I do Q&As. I did a Q&A today, and people say, what's the best push-focus split? And I was like, I don't know. I haven't seen you. And that doesn't sound as sexy as going, do this, bro.
Yeah, broad statements in absence of context, you can't really make. I mean, there's obviously general statements that we can make within the physique development or health world, but they're few and far between. If anything, you could kind of segregate in ranges for people based on averages. And based on averages, most people reading it will be in the average, you know. But yeah, I just kind of wanted to, maybe for people watching this, there are obviously people that are seeking knowledge. So in your time spent seeking that knowledge, I would just recommend you to be dubious, maybe.
I think healthy skepticism is a good thing.
Skeptical is the word I was looking for. Thank you.
If you're healthily skeptical, whenever I hear a claim, I go, that's interesting. Let's have a little look into
further.
that. Yeah, I wouldn't go, this man's saying I'm going to go a foot in height. That sounds legit. He's the only person in the world that's saying that. In my eyes, alarm bells should be ringing.
Yeah.
Like my bullshit alarm be going off.
I think as well as a consumer or someone in the fitness industry that hears claims or hears of a certain method or study or something that's going to get their results, like if the only place you're getting your information from is an influencer or is even a coach like myself or one of us, and that's the furthest you're looking in terms of your progression, then you need to look a little bit deeper and not just trust the one face that's up on your feed.
Yeah, the place or the arena that I see this happen more than anywhere is with supplements and nootropics. Like, it's almost like an addiction. I don't really want to use that term kind of willy-nilly, but if anybody's ever spent some time on Reddit, on the nootropics page or the supplements page, you know, you'll see one anecdote. But some of the things you see on Reddit are insane. Like, took ashwagandha once and had anhedonia for 6 months, or took lion's mane and lost all cognitive. Like, people, the anecdotes are, and that sounds like I'm being quite facetious, but I'm not. They're genuine anecdotes that are on Reddit. But, you know, I took this B complex and my clinical anxiety disappeared, which, you know, B complex, various B vitamins are implicated in proper neurotransmitter function, yeah. But then it's like everybody will immediately buy that supplement, or like that Shilajit, or however you pronounce it. That's the big one at the minute. It's all over everywhere. There's practically no human data on it, and also nobody really knows how it works. It's this weird sort of collection of mechanisms, and you know, but everyone will buy it. because it's and I feel for these people because like it's people with like anxiety or depression or something, and it's looking for the one solve, but I don't really know where I was going with this, but basically, yeah, it's easy to get caught up in things like that without taking a step back and even just let me just look at it on Examine for a second or something like that. You know what I
Rather
mean?
than just the trusted face that you.
Yeah.
I
liked a
also
few of the
think
videos.
I also think other coaches respond badly. So let's say someone's made a claim and you say, I'm going to grow a foot in height. Every other coach that hears that will disagree in such a vehement manner.
Sort of what I just did.
But you didn't call out the person. You didn't go for it on ad hominem attacks. You haven't attacked the person. But most of the time, the industry will go essentially point to that individual and say, you're a fucking idiot.
Yeah, in this
it
TikTok
creates,
world.
It creates a siege mentality around
Yeah,
that
yeah.
thought process. Rather than having, that's really interesting. Have you got any data to back that up and enter a dialogue? Most people go back and go, show me the fucking data. And that then causes that individual and the followers of that individual to now go, I'm going to hold this even tighter. And then they hold on to that idea and it creates, again, us and them. Look at Eddie Abu. Everyone's gone, instead of going, actually, well, the data says this, they've gone, you're an idiot. And it's created even bigger following for him.
Well, what it's done is what's the word? Maybe ideologized. It's like pushed ideology into this world where it shouldn't exist. I mean, I'm a huge fan, as you guys know, of like philosophy, theology, politics, and I've watched lots of debates for many years. Like one of my favorite things, debates. And the thing with a debate is you're not trying to convince the other person that you're right. You're trying to convince the person watching the debate or the audience that you're right. And ideologies do branch from these. There's, of course, political ideologies and theological ideologies, but it always feels like a shame when it happens with emotive drive in the fitness world.
Yeah.
It's a strange thing.
It is the hook because everybody is a coach that isn't an educator.
There's also two sides to it, isn't it? I always think, I try with the best of my ability, approach these situations with a bit of empathy and think, if I knew what they knew, I'd probably think the same. And that will work for most of the situations. However, there's a lot of people that are just doing it and they know they're lying and they're doing it for business purposes. And that's the really tricky one, because if you are genuinely making a mistake or you believe that's what you believe, that's a conversation you can maybe win that person round. But if the person's literally just making up and lying, that's a really tricky one.
And I think that's what your starting point for red flags for educators or anything like that is. Would they go back on their word or believes in realisation of new data or new methods?
Absolutely. Yeah, I would be more interested with people that, not to be not opinionated, because you can't eliminate opinion, but to always appear open-minded and inquisitive about what the other side has to say. To stand for your point well if you can present data on it, but also change your mind if you are presented with data on the contrary.
Which is compelling.
I think that's the difference with people that can portray it well, that can portray it. This is what I, in light of, believe is the best route currently, and may change.
It's going to be the difference between the individual that actually wants to know the answer versus the individual that purely wants to use some kind of advertisement basis around a specific ideology. Like for me, I always wanted to know like what the best route to take is, and that comes in my hierarchy of importance far above and beyond any marketing scheme around this one specific idea or something. So, and I've been like hounded in the past for changing my ideas on some quite big things, as you guys would have seen, but
you ain't changing your mind, so it's going wrong.
It's more important that like I just want my clients to have the closest thing to the truth as possible. But yeah, I think to round that off, basically, if somebody's making wild claims and they're not providing any evidence to support the claims, then I probably wouldn't pay too much attention to it or anything else the person's got to say.
And I also think, just as a closing comment, just what I think about, there haven't really been any like life-changing things in the last period of time. Like, it's not like this one study or this one thing elevated the game.
Has disproved everything else.
Yeah, but it wasn't like, oh, take this drug, you look like C-bum, or this one exercise made me look like Olympic. It's unlikely to move the needle that much.
Or like I would say across nutrition, across training, across PEDs, in the last, I mean, we've understood things
better,
but nothing has really changed that's going to make a statistically significant difference. There's little minor things, maybe like having a finer tuning on protein intake. Training is a mess. Training data is a mess. I don't know if we've got anywhere with that. Drug data, again, still very much a mess. Maybe nutrition would be the one that we've understood a little bit more than the others. But yeah, and PEDs and training, nothing is really revolutionary. There might be little tweaks that help here and there, but at the end of the day, not a lot has changed. Anyway, I wanted to know if you guys have ever had a client poached by another coach.
I don't think I have.
And how often do you think it happens?
I think it happens all the time.
You reckon?
In the competitive environment. And this is what I've seen. Say you're a competitor and you're at a show and you see someone come in and they win your class and maybe you're second. And then someone's going, I've got the secret, mate, to get you to number one. I've got that thing that you're missing. They know what they've already got, right, in their coach. They're aware of what they've already got. But this other person's promising something they haven't got, that winning position. And I could see when someone's a little bit emotionally vulnerable, a little bit caught up in that outcome, and I've seen it happen, where I've got the answer, mate. I'm not saying you should move, but I've got the answers.
I do see it quite frequently. And I think, to be honest, I think of a good example is Heck, because very rarely is a competitor
Nafek, my client,
that competes that frequently or competes at all is in such a chilled, settled headspace with their own progression.
It's good you give him
year on year to not worry too much about the outcome or what anybody else has to say.
It's good you give Nafe as an example, actually, because we were sat backstage at Two Bros for the regional that he did this year, and we were talking about coach who I won't name, who is actively sort of weaning his way in. And it's a coach that's poached others of my clients as well. And we were just laughing about it, really, luckily. But funnily enough, the way that you just presented that is exactly the way that it's happened to me in the past. Like, for what I know of, like, very clearly, I've had 3 clients that have been actively poached, you could say. But, like, one example was I was prepping somebody and they were ready. They'd already done, I think, a couple of shows, and they told me, I need to get leaner for this next one. I need to bring it in. I said, you're peeled. If you push any more now, there's going to be a big cost to pay. I wouldn't recommend that we do it. It was like, no, I really want to press in for this one. I said, okay, well, as long as you understand the risk. We did, and then they didn't win because they were too dug down, like too flat. It faded, like. And I said, man, like I tried my best with that, but I did really recommend that we didn't. And then this coach was backstage and had essentially said, if you'd have done it like this and this, you would have won that. And then they left. But then 3 weeks later, they came back.
I think with the client as well, like, to not take it too personally, because it tends to be a client that is more flippant anyway in how they act with things. Like, they're already not trusting your decision based on an outcome that they think is the right outcome when it's not necessarily. Like, whether it's judges' feedback, whether it's like the trend of what you've seen on stage or season, but they already think they know better a lot of the time in their own head, and they're just looking for a bit of confirmation bias.
I think, to take it outside of bodybuilding for a second, if you put it in another situation and you said, imagine I come to you guys, I've met this girl. She was with someone, but she's left him for me. You'd be thinking, Matt, she sounds a bit, probably not the sort of person you want to settle down with, right? And that's the sort of client, if they're going to go, you probably don't want that client.
It's going to cause you a headache at some point, anyway, so.
Yeah, it's not something I've experienced myself, but it happens.
Yeah, didn't you say you had sorry, I'm going to a different topic now. Didn't you say you wanted to do an under and overrated?
Under and overrated, yeah. So I always find this quite fascinating within bodybuilding because there's always this recency bias of the newest hot thing, and there's also something catches people's attention. They see some like mutant doing it, and they go, "Fuck me, I've got to do it." And they might be doing it for a very, very valid reason for them, but then everyone catches onto it. I've got 2 which spring to mind: one training, one nutrition. Sort of nutrition.
So is that what we're doing, like over and underrated nutrition and?
Oh, you can go. Well, but I think I've got 2 for you.
Go on.
Overrated digestive enzymes. I see people all the time. They don't sleep, stressed to fuck, shoveling their meals in.
300 bigs tren.
Yeah, eating loads of processed foods. I think I should probably take some digestive enzymes. I think you need to sort your fucking life out.
Yeah, most of it is like stress related. From what I've experienced with clients, they haven't got a fucking grip on it.
Yeah.
That's one of those ones. And then training wise, I haven't seen these for a while, but they had a run. Snatch grip RDLs.
Yeah, they did have a run. Yeah,
they were the one.
Yeah, not a bad movement.
No,
but
not at all.
Not what I would pick for hypertrophy.
The thing is, I saw Jordan doing it, and he's just a fucking freak, like Jimmy by JP.
Yeah.
Whatever you do, I'm impressed by it. I'm like, you're a fucking mutant.
Yeah.
That's cool to watch. But when you see some guy who's like 60 kilos, you know what? To bring up my back thickness, I need to do a snatch grip dead. Everyone started doing it. You're like, I let Jordan do it if he wants. Like, why are you doing it? Like,
they're definitely gonna build some sick erectors and traps. To be fair, if you get really strong at them, but a particularly awkward move. I mean, I certainly wouldn't like replace just a normal RDL with a snatch grip.
That was the one I just remember just laughing at it. Like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah,
You guys must have one.
What? So
It could be underrated,
overrated.
I don't know what supplement wise.
anything. Oh, we just go for it.
I don't know. I don't think about stuff like that.
Oh, I love this sort of stuff. Overrated.
Overrated could just be protein intake in general.
Yeah.
Like more and more. I mean, could we have any more evidence? In fact, protein total and protein timing, or two things that are. Or I might even go as far as saying nutrient timing in the bodybuilding world.
I'd
have to put such a.
That can be both.
Yeah, I mean,
Depends
we've
on the
got
crowd you
people
speak to.
we've got people, and don't get me wrong, anybody listening to this, I'm not saying nutrient timing has like no impact, but there are people that are basing their nutrient timing off of research papers done on long distance cyclists doing like super glucose intensive work when, you know, in reality, the glycogen depletion effects of a single resistance training session with the kind of volumes that we use is so minor to maybe moderate, and you're consuming a sufficient amount of carbohydrate before the next time you resistance train, you know, and similar to the protein thing, like we've got such great evidence on true protein requirements. We did a video on it recently, like 0.7, 0.8 gram per pound, more than enough. And then factor in that most of the people watching this are using drugs that crank up muscle protein synthesis anyway. It's probably going to be even less than that. But then like protein timing as well, like there's plenty of data to suggest that it makes no difference.
Especially with the recent studies.
Or how about protein distribution? Again, it's like, okay, look, evenly spread that throughout the day. Maybe better for GI, maybe better for your digestion. So I do it just for ease, but if you wanted to have 10 grams of protein now and 100 later, the outcome's going to be the same. So that's my overrated spiel. What, did you give an underrated?
Underrated.
All right, what would be your overrated then, right? And then you can do
I say,
your underrated.
Ryan looks like he's still thinking. It's going to sound really stupid. Underrated sleep.
Is it underrated?
I honestly
Who's
think it
discounting
is.
sleep?
I think if you said to everyone, is sleep important? How many of your clients?
They say yeah, but they don't.
How many of your clients actually put it into practice and get sort of 8-9 hours sleep a night? How many actually do it?
Who can do that? Oh, I need some tips. I mean, I segregate, or I try to. It's difficult with BJJ.
Why do you think I look so young?
Why do you think I look so old? I spend 9 hours in bed.
Yeah.
And I nail everything that I can do from a sleep routine perspective.
Yeah.
And I'll get 7 hours and a half max. But that's how much I wake up, man.
If you feel good,
I'm fine.
there you go.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people set themselves up. They're like, I know sleep's important, but like there is no. Oh, I want to get more work done. Do you understand the argument that you're going to be less able to do that work if you sleep less?
You got your overrated yet? Because I've got my underrated.
I think the overrated is going to be like the over obsession with the perfect split.
Very good. Yeah, the frequency stuff. Oh, such a topical thing now because Matt's leaving us, but we're gonna carry on. He can't control his diuresis. Took a few too many aldactone this morning, and
Overrated.
yeah. The frequency thing's big because, like, especially now on social media, there's I'm gonna have to say I'm not gonna name names, but there's like a camp forming that has a big following. And one of the most recent things has been going through the frequency data, and a lot of it I can agree on when it comes to things like likely having more total net hypertrophy outcome with a higher frequency compared to matching that volume if the frequency studies were done over a long period of time and on advanced trainees, i.e. comparing 6 sets in one workout versus 3 sets in 2. You could say per set there'd probably be more motor unit recruitment, less muscle damage, less CNS fatigue. But I don't know how that, I think that's a reasonable hypothesis. In fact, I think that's probably a very credible hypothesis. But I don't know if at the volumes that we train at, if there would be a statistically significant difference. I don't know. I've also never seen a difference in clients really with frequency for the most part, unless we're doing it for some kind of like injury purpose, like spreading volume out thinner to not have, like I just did one of my clients checking today, and we're trying to bring up the lower body. So spreading work that loads deep knee flexion out a bit more.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the hypertrophy, I basically long spiel. I agree. Like your testament to that on the split that you're on now. We've had to sort of match volume across all kinds of splits, and the outcome's always been the same.
Yeah, pretty much. I only notice it like in the same way as you when you're trying to distribute it so the days don't interfere with each other when you have to have that much total work for a certain muscle group.
You know what? A week tomorrow, I'm actually doing a podcast with Dr. Soko
Sick.
on frequency, because I was talking to him the other day about this wave of frequency discussion around the physiology of atrophy and anabolism and things like that. And I think he said, like, that's absolute bullshit. Let's do a podcast on it. And I was like, yeah, I look forward to that, because any more confirmation bias for me, like train everything like every 5 days. I don't train everything twice a week. It's like, well, it's once every 5 days. You're probably less than that, aren't you? Because you run a 4-way split across.
Yeah, it's once every 5 days I'll hit something, yeah. I do 4 straight. I do back, chest tries, lower, delts buys,
And then
rest,
off,
and then
and then
repeat.
again, yeah. Yeah, so I do very similar to that, apart from I always want the same rest day. So I do a 4-day rotation, but 6 days on, 1 day off. And that ends up about every 5 days-ish, yeah.
I think the bit that always makes me laugh is we're using physiology, which is a different concept to time. We're looking at the Gregorian calendar saying, does it fit in my 7-day made-up time frame?
Yeah.
And that's the thing where you're like, well, physiology doesn't care. It's not going, fuck me, 7 days, I've got to train twice. Like, why? I think everyone's going to have their own individual level of frequency they can handle based upon the volume they did in the session and obviously their level of recovery. If you think stimulus recovery, if you can get that to match the frequency, probably shouldn't matter. It's more like I'd be thinking more the per session volume in a way. Like, can I, like,
Yeah, tick all the boxes in that session, or they getting from what they need from that session.
And then when am I recovering from that said session? If you do less, you're going to recover quicker. Maybe do more, but the overall total volume is going to remain the same.
Yeah, my underrated is going to be boring for anyone watching this, but I think massively underrated is antioxidant intake and supplementation or supplementation.
I said sleep, Joe, so you can't go much more boring than that.
Yeah, true. Everyone wants sleep in today's modern world. But antioxidant supplementation, not just for your health, but if anyone's ever read some of the literature on the effects on ADHD, autism, depression, aging from some antioxidant supplementation, or like normalizing glutathione levels through NAC or glutathione, or the one I can never pronounce, is it Pycnogenol? The one I did the post on yesterday, that supplement that I love. Like, you see all these things implicated in these neurotransmitter, we'll say, dysfunctions, if that's the right way to put it. You know, I can't think of how many clients I've had really ramp up their antioxidants. It's like, man, I feel better. My mood is better. My sleep is better. I'm happier. I'm less anxious. Like, just from something we think is, I better get them in because it's healthy.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, no, there's actual changes your experience of your own life.
I get really, really annoyed when I see bodybuilders don't eat fruits and vegetables.
Yeah.
It really, like,
Yeah, that grinds my fucking gears.
I look at it and go, right, in a really simplistic sense, a normal human being who's just natty, you've got a certain amount of fires happening in the body spontaneously, that's your oxidative stress, and then we've got our firemen, for want of a better word, quenching that. And it's usually working quite well if we're eating a lot of fruits and veggies. We're now timesing that by 10 plus with more drugs, and we go, I'm going to take away that fruit and veggies because my whatever reason they give, like, oh, I look older. Like, yeah, you will. I feel shit. Yeah.
Do you not think for these people it's like, I wish you could consume at least sufficient dietary antioxidants, just see how you feel?
Yeah.
So I think that's a big thing. I think it's hard to convince people to do something like, just like, especially bodybuilders, like just for their health.
Do you know when you see like an obese person though, and they go, I feel all right? Like, you don't know what good feels like.
Yeah.
It's the same when I see like, as soon as they eat better, they're like, oh my God.
I've got an analogy for this, but carry on.
Go ahead.
No, did you have anything on that, bro?
I was going to say a good one. Like, you will get people to eat for a function. Beetroot because they get a good pump.
Yeah.
And they'll fucking like green beans, beetroot and pre-workout meal. That's it.
Yeah, so my analogy that I can fit to this is something I was thinking a lot about the other day. So I recently read a book about Shaolin philosophy.
I've bought this on my to-do list, or to-read list.
That's an excellent book, that. If anybody wants book recommendations,
We could do that.
I've got
mate.
it. I do 2 books a week at the minute. I've actually started collating
Show
a list. So, yeah, just sort of
And I'm just on my dick pills.
talking about dick measuring contests. I'm acquiring more knowledge than you, bro.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Optimise me,
yeah.
bro.
If anybody wants my book recommendations, I've actually collated them. So go on my Instagram, link in the bio. You'll see Joe's recommendation. It took me hours to make those links, but people seem to be using them, so that's good. Anyway, they were talking about the frog in the water analogy, which I'm sure you've heard.
What, the boil the frog?
Yeah, have you heard this? Basically, if you put a frog in boiling water, it jumps straight out. If you put a frog in room temperature water and slowly turn the heat up, it will sit in there until it dies. So, and that was my analogy towards the obese individuals, that they've slowly got there, so that they're killing themselves without realizing it. And I was thinking about this with bodybuilders because recently with a client, and if they're watching this, they'll know who it is. They'd sort of come to the end of a blast, and it's sort of like where you are, actually. This would be a good analogy for you, is come to the end of a blast, and then we've pulled down to a TRT cruise, we've pulled into a slight deficit, we've pulled training volume way down, like stresses have come down. And prior to us moving into this, the feedback was sort of, I feel great, I can keep going, keep playing forward, I got no problems. But then it was, I remember in the summary form, it was like, now I realized that I didn't feel great because you're slowly accumulating androgens, you're slowly adding body weight. So you're like the frog in the water that the temperature is slowly getting escalated in. And it's not until you come out the other side and start to pull down the stresses that you're like, oh, I didn't realize where I was. And I think a lot of bodybuilders put themselves in that position over a multi-decade time frame. You don't realize because the body weight's slowly going on or the health slowly getting negatively impacted that you're sort of edging yourself towards this discomfort so slowly that you don't realize that you're there until you pull back.
And it is these little changes. Like I see a lot of people I went to school with who are my age, and I'm like, what the fuck happened to you? And it wasn't the big movers. It was the little habits over time that if you had a chart, that 1% difference versus 1% decline over 10 years, that difference is enormous. But day to day, you can't see it. And that's kind of the thing I tend to see.
Tell you what else is overrated.
Go on.
Hyperplasia.
You're going to be the bird. You're going to do some weighted stretches for me.
Still one of the most frequently asked questions about growth hormone is, can it cause hyperplasia? I'm going to go ahead and say, I don't know, but it's very unlikely. If you just look at hyperplasia in general, not even talking about growth hormone, like anything that can cause hyperplasia in humans, it's never been found. You've never seen hyperplasia occur in humans outside of like the perinatal period.
So I think the only thing I can ever think about was the stretch study on birds.
Yeah,
that's the only thing I can think
whale.
About. Yeah, when they stretched it out.
Yeah, it's like double its body weight over days or something. Yeah. And there was like surrogate model. We can't apply that to a human. And you can't do that.
I honestly can't think of an example.
I'm going to say there's no evidence to say that it does, and no evidence to say that it doesn't. I think it's reasonable to assume that it doesn't, though.
I think it's more overrated, underrated.
We're still doing that?
I'm still thinking. I'll tell you one I was going to throw out because it actually gives me a bit of a gimmick. Smelling salts.
Do you not like them?
Overrated.
I think overrated massively. I think the reason I don't like it, and this is just me, I think maybe this is my cognitive bias, right? A lot of the time you want to go into the gym and you want to be able to repeat that effort.
Yeah.
You want to be able to go and repeat the conditions that you put yourself into. And everyone's going to have a different level of conditions, right? There's some people that go in and they're just like very calm focused. Some people are really like jacked up. But if every time you've got to get into this like horrible
enhance your way
place,
there every single session.
Yeah, like where do you draw the line? Do you start taking fucking in a test suspension before you go in? Do you start like where do you draw the line? It's like every time you're having this thing which is incredibly sympathetically driven, you're always going to have to go to that place to get progressions. And I just don't think
it's interesting you say that because like for bodybuilders, I'd probably make the argument that you want to keep that neural sympathetic drive as low as possible in your sessions. There's gonna be times that you're gonna have to whip it out, but I've really tried to focus on it recently because, in fact, I put a training video up this week because I bought a tripod for the first time.
Come on, it's one on my head.
Yeah, it's good that.
I've got one.
It works really well. But there was a couple of comments on there like, why are you listening to a podcast? And it was because I was putting music on that was really amping me up, and then which would be fine because I train really low volumes. But the problem is I've got to train and then eat and then go to jiu-jitsu. And
that dip between sympathetic and parasympathetic is going to happen.
My recovery, I've been really struggling. If you're going to train legs and then eat and then go and roll for an hour, it's exhausting.
Are you familiar with Mike Teixeira? I've spoken about him quite a lot.
No.
So Mike Teixeira he was the one that essentially brought Reps in Reserve to the market, essentially. He had reactive training systems. I think they call it something else now. But he's like a world world class, won loads of powerlifting stuff. He's a world class coach, and he worked with Eric Helms to develop his thesis for the reps in reserve. So he basically fucking super strong guy, absolutely fucking jacked. And he obviously powerlifting is entirely strength based. He was like, right, well, you can't go there every time. He's like, just go in and do your job, because not only is it going to affect your recovery, affect all these other factors, you've got to get there every time you train. But then where do you go for competition? Like, you've got nowhere to go. He's like, man, you're always redlining yourself. So it's like, go and do your job, and if you want to get, then you can get amped up for competition. Then you've got something else there.
Yeah,
it's like your NOS button.
That's the crossover that a lot of bodybuilders get. I think, especially in the UK, it's as if it is a purely strength-based sport, and it is not.
Yeah.
And that's the downfall of the entirety of it. Like, everything is so sympathetically driven. Like, cannot handle more than one set, and it has to be a back-off set if they do a second. And it's.
I think that's really applicable to take what you just said into like hypertrophy research. When you compare studies that, when you look at studies that compare 1 rep in reserve versus naught, like where they're really close and they're easily trackable. It's not like we're comparing 4 RAR to naught. It becomes a little bit more hazy, but in those studies you see far more muscle damage, which we know is not something that we want high, or it's unavoidable to some degree, but we don't want high muscle damage ideally if we're looking to maximize adaptation and exposure to mechanical tension. And CNS fatigue is high for an extremely insignificant benefit on hypertrophy. So I'd always pick 1 RAR over 0 RAR in general for bodybuilders. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, it's tricky because we know we need progressive overload. Like, we know we need it. We know we need to be adding reps and load and whatnot. And we enjoy that. We love it. It's the game, isn't it? But then it's really easy for that 1 RAR to turn to 0 RAR, to turn to a really cranky 0 RAR.
Yeah.
On your search for progressive overload. I was talking to one of my clients, Craig, this morning about this. Is like where he had kind of accidentally fallen into this rhythm. And then there's nothing wrong with making your next progressive overload. Just turn that current 0 RAR into 1 over time. And it doesn't have to be every single session. You know, those adaptations for an advanced trainee, if I've got a client that's progressively overloading really clean every 2 to 3 weeks, then that's fantastic. This individual's been training over a decade or whatever. That's great. You know, we shouldn't be so emotionally harmed by not progressively overloading every single workout. And then you get into this thing like, oh, I got stuck on that, so I just swapped out the exercise.
Yeah, and I think they don't view regressions as like what we'd class a true regression as be. It may be like 2 reps down on a single set out of 5 exercises in the session, rather than like every consequential set falling out of that rep range, having to use a lower weight, and it consistently looking like that throughout the training block and going off that rather than just...
Yeah, you're much better off being patient, allowing some things to maintain. Eventually, it will progress. Keep that fatigue low so you can set those adaptations to the highest level. So a strict 1 RAR. And before you get emotional or change exercises, because the problem is, you know, we swap out exercises if we think they're stuck. And then you think you're progressing on that because you're basically just going through this period of skill acquisition.
Learning it,
And then that thing's stuck because you cranked it hard, and you're swapping the other one back in. You think you're progressing back on that. And, you know, you think we just need to go, right, hold on. Relax a second. Just let it be a maintenance for maybe 1 or 2 weeks, whatever. Get that execution beautiful. Make it a true 1 RAR, and then add a tiny bit of load or 1 rep out of 4 sets or something, you know.
I found that's like been my most progressive periods where you've lifted that weight the week before. Can you just switch off and do the same set without having to have such neural drive with it?
I've been doing that a lot this sort of time since I've been on a fertility protocol and training with very low volumes and doing BJJ and whatnot. Is like, I'll have some exercises, like my incline dumbbell press has been the same for like 4 weeks, but
it's not fell off a cliff.
No, and every time the execution has improved a little bit and the proximity to failure has died off a little bit, but I'm still not confident that it's a really clean 1 RAR. But then the cable fly that I do after that has been progressing really well. So my pec stimulus of that day is going up nicely, but in the past, that would have really hurt me and it would have really affected my day.
Yeah. Again, I think the UK bodybuilder married to the strength-focused workouts or progressions of bang for your buck movements of dumbbell presses and things like that.
I think, to me, this is how I kind of view it. is you need to kind of remove the emotion. And if you can remove the emotion, what you're going to have is, if you take a step back and you say, the progressions I'm experiencing are a sign the adaptations are occurring. So if I can progress, that means I've adapted, right? So we don't, this is a weird way of thinking of it, but just bear with me. Me progressing is the adaptation. So if I just go and do the set, and then over time I am progressing, I'm proving that the adaptations are occurring. I don't need to progress to adapt. It's the other way around.
That's true, yeah.
And if you think of it like that, I know it sounds really backward because everyone's going and going, got to beat the logbook. And that is the global concept. But you need to provide a stimulus that you adapt to then be able to progress, right? So
Said principle.
yes, absolutely.
Specific adaptation to imposed demand.
And that's it. And I think people have got it the wrong way round. So people are going, you've got to go and beat the logbook. You're only going to beat the logbook if you've adapted to the previous session or previous stimulus, like sessions, right? And that's where I think people get it the wrong way round. So when you're married to just progression, you see this, it's become a meme. My form was a bit bad, but I'll clean that up next week. Well, you haven't progressed. You've progressed on paper, because that's the only metric you've got to track it, but you haven't actually progressed because you made this into a different exercise, essentially, by changing the technique.
That's one of my underrated as well, the skill acquisition of an exercise.
I've got let's just keep doing over.
I enjoyed it.
I've got another underrated wide grip lat pull down.
Wide grip.
Under or over?
Overhand.
Over. No, underrated or overrated?
Underrated.
Yeah.
Sick lat movement that fell out of fashion for a long time.
Why is it not a lat that pisses me off?
And it's because everyone wanted to do sagittal plane pull down and row, which are excellent lat exercises. They're fantastic. You know, the unilateral sagittal plane pull down or row that everyone does. I mean, I'm sat in front of a nitro pull down that I paid a lot of money for. You know, I love them. But wide grip pull down is a sick exercise for the lats. There's no reason not to do it. And I would argue against like everyone constantly training in the same plane for the lats is not the most efficient way to grow your lats. You know, a lot of people will do a sagittal plane pull down and then a sagittal plane row. It's like you're doing the same exercise practically, working through the same plane. Do like a sagittal plane row and a wide grip pull down.
Do you know what I think that comes from, though? The internet loves to say,
This is the best.
no, if you had one exercise,
Yeah.
if you had one exercise, what are you going to do? I haven't got to make a fucking choice.
Yeah, I probably would pick the sagittal plane pull down if I had one exercise.
I personally like the sagittal plane pull down for sure, but that doesn't mean it's the only one we've got. Like we go to gyms, I've got lots of equipment. Like we have to pick one, and I think that's where people get a little bit caught up, perhaps. And I've been there before. I'm thinking, I'm going to do that.
The lats do like abduct the upper arm. Like
Yeah.
as well, I'm talking frontal plane here as well. Like I'm talking in this kind of plane. If you're like leant back and
I think like an old school
aligning with your
lat pull down.
yeah, because I've trained back today. I put it on my story. I did like wide grip lat pull down on that in the frontal plane 6. So like I'll be pulling
Get
like
an
here,
abduction as well.
yeah, and then I'll turn the cables all the way in to where they are now, push the brace all the way out, and do like a high row.
Yeah.
In this sort of plane. So I'm working scapular retraction, protraction there. So it's trap, more kind of rear delt based. But it's a completely different movement depending on where you position yourself on it. But wide grip, pull down, wide grip, chin up, there is a great lat movement.
I think the chin as well. Like anything that moves the body or joints in a way that your body would have to stabilize itself if it pulled itself. Like you don't have to squat, but if you can actually perform a squat pattern, the development of your legs will look a lot more balanced.
Yeah,
And same with back.
I think this is. I can understand why this has been a big push against evidence-based guys, because you see this like weak as shit bloke coming to the gym. He's doing his single arm sagittal plane pull downs, and he's like executing every single inch of the way. And you're like, everyone's going, fuck that guy.
And it is funny because they're never big. You're
Yeah.
right,
Well,
but
I reckon
like-
that's another overrated, like exercise selection in general.
Yeah. That's perfect split.
Well, I think you again.
Have we got any research that? In fact, we do. We have that lat study, funnily enough, don't we?
Yeah.
And there was it no difference or the most lat activation? EMG based stuff.
This is where I'm obviously conscious that, like EMG, but I'm also conscious, like, we look at what happened in the real world. Like we said earlier, people haven't really changed that much their training in the last 20, 30, 40 years. It's almost like we go, that's a shit thing to do, and then we come back around and go, we should probably include that. Like, all the stuff that we're talking about, people were doing this years and years
Do you think
ago.
if you took two bodybuilders, two advanced bodybuilders, or twins, twin study, and had one training program with a dose of volume, frequency, whatever, with exercises that aligned with the fibers of each muscle perfectly and loaded in the length and range, had the perfect resistance profile or whatever, and then the other person just picked movements on that body part that they feel good doing,
Well,
would there be a statistically significant
We've
difference?
got quite a lot of data on like self-selected exercises. Like pick the ones that you like.
Yeah.
And that's pretty fucking good.
Yeah.
Like, so,
I don't think there'd be a difference.
No. But also, this is the really hard bit for me, is you're saying, when you say you pick exercises you like, you're also missing almost the non-measurables. I really enjoy this. You can't measure that. I'm going to stick to it. I'm going to probably give it more effort. I'm going to be more locked in.
Yeah.
Those are all the stuff that's like a non-measurable. I would rather pick exercises I fucking loved, personally, and it might not be the best on paper, but I'm going to fucking do it.
I think the point we're making is that it causes worry for people.
Yeah, it does.
You know,
But we worried about it, though.
I'm not worried about it.
But we used to. I fucking did.
I've never been too fussed on exercise selection or even like execution to the degree where alignment and whatnot has to be put. I think like if you're talking best practices, yeah, it's likely better to pick a machine with a resistance profile that's loading the length and range and aligns well. I don't think that's as important as the movement being comfortable or stable or able
safe.
to easily progressively overload. Like all the kit I've got in here was just kit that I'd used in gyms that I liked. So, but I think it causes concern in people when, here's one, overrated, training the iliac lat. It's like, I don't,
Fuck off.
I mean, I don't want to like take the piss out of it because like, for example, if you do like an iliac pull around or a wide grip pull down, that it seems would bias the iliac lat. It's like you're looking at your programming like, okay, I want to do 2 lat movements today and I need to make sure one of them hits the iliac lat and one of them is the lumbar or thoracic or whatever. It's like, I don't think we have any research or even anecdotal evidence that focusing on specific parts of the lat is going to do anything to you to make. I mean, it might do though. Again, absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence, but I mean,
I think
it's the worry, it's the concern, it's the obsession about programming that is unnecessary.
I think just picking exercises that would train the muscle in different planes is probably going to tick your boxes anyway.
Yeah.
And
What
that
can get
keep
the
you-
most bang for the buck?
Yeah.
How CNS taxing is it and fatiguing is it? Can the athlete handle said exercise throughout a training program?
Here's another overrated for you.
Go on. You're into this now. This
Yeah.
is- you couldn't think to start with. Now you're fucking throwing them out.
Training with high reps.
Overrated.
Yeah. Very.
When you say high reps, what do you mean?
Well, training anything over the lowest reps that you can comfortably perform without joint, ligament, tendon fatigue with the given exercise, as long as it's above 4 or 5 reps.
I would agree to a point. I guess this comes down to kind of personal preference as well, though. Like what feels good.
Well, the thing is, we know that there's
doesn't matter, but-
equal hypertrophy outcome, and we know it appears that intra-session fatigue and post-workout fatigue is higher
It will be,
in
yeah.
individuals that train with higher reps. So that's like a lose-lose situation. And we also know training with high reps takes longer.
Yeah. Harder to gauge.
So, yeah, harder to gauge RIR.
I think the caveat that you made was perfect. Was that you can do it without any pain.
Yeah, I'm not
That's
telling
kinda-
I'm not telling anybody to do
5 rep max
side
biceps
lateral
training.
raises with
Yeah.
4 reps. I mean, I can do like 6 to 10 on cable side laterals, fine. But yeah, the lowest reps that you can get a solid stability and stimulus with is solid. Again, like rest times.
I remember there
We-
was
we
a
went
big
through that as well.
I remember there was a big movement a couple of years back. I think it was maybe 5 or 6 years. Do you remember the BFR Katsu training?
Yeah.
They were like, we can get some satellite cell proliferation with Katsu training, and that's why people went really high reps. I remember that was that kind of like, again, there's never been any proven data on it, but we can maybe potentiate further muscle growth with these high rep sets. The only time I ever do high reps is because I've got fucking old joints.
Yeah, I think there's like I was saying about skill acquisition of something. Like quite often people will load up the Cybex hack with 5 plates because they can get a 6 to 8 and not have very big legs and not connect well with their quads and have to actually wrap their knees.
Yeah, it's going to be... I think, yeah, so to tie into that metabolite accumulation.
Yeah, how much can you actually squeeze out of said movement in?
Is overrated.
Oh, yeah.
Just mechanical tension, good execution, get stronger, keep your reps as low as you need. I probably wouldn't go under 5, but 4 would be fine.
I wouldn't go to 5, but 4 is fine.
Well, no, I mean, like, I wouldn't throw out a recommendation of under 5, but I think I do sets of 4 on that hack, and I mean, I haven't got huge legs, so don't take the advice. But yeah, just generally metabolite accumulation and high reps just don't seem to actually. Well, they don't only offer no benefit. Seemingly, there's some drawbacks.
Certainly.
Do you know what? Here's topical for you that you were talking about.
Go on.
Cuffs. Using cuffs.
You know what? This again. It goes back to that the pendulum, doesn't it? It always goes through phases, and talking about educators as well. Should I use cuffs? Should I not? It depends. It went through a phase. Everyone used cuffs for everything. Now no one uses cuffs, or it's seemingly a lot less. I still use them for the basics. I still do cuff lies. I still do cuff laterals. I still use them for push downs. I still really like them.
Yeah, I would say that whether you hold the weight or cuff the weight, it's going to make no difference. Pick whichever one is more comfortable for you. Like cable flies, I really don't like cuffing them. I like holding the handles. In fact, I try to hold the handles more. I try to hold the handles as much as possible because I do want to be holding things. I don't know if you get forearm hypertrophy from it, but when it comes to things like jiu-jitsu and grip, so I like do everything with the CAS handles and try to be able to load.
Yeah.
But again, but for my laterals and Y rays and stuff, like handles feel really uncomfortable for me, especially behind the back. So I just use cuffs. But I don't think there's a unique advantage beyond just comfortability.
That's what I think.
You will be able to use more load with the cuffs and whatnot, but that's not going to translate to more mechanical tension because you're shortening the moment arm to the joint. So ultimately, again, it's just going to come down to what we were just talking about.
Is it comfortable?
Whatever comfortable.
Yeah.
Training the plane that you're trying to train, progressively overload it.
This takes me onto a little tangent, which is something that it really kind of annoys me, and I talked about this the other day, was people love to put their personal preference on other people in bodybuilding. And I talked about it in the relation of, say you went out for dinner with your mates and someone was like, I'm going to order a burger, and you're ordering a steak. You wouldn't be like, dickhead, why are you ordering that? Unless you're a cunt.
Depends where you go.
Well, maybe that.
If you went Flavour Trailer, innit, and didn't order a burger, you're out your mind.
So, well, if someone's, they're like, you can't order that. Like, why the fuck should it matter? It's my food. And it's the same way, like, you see someone training, dickhead, not using cuffs, or is using cuffs, depending on your personal preference. You're like, why the fuck does it matter to you? And I find that kind of holier than thou attitude where people go, he's not doing it the most optimal way. Well, maybe he fucking is for him.
And
why does it matter?
It probably won't, like we've spoken about, be no difference anyway.
No, but they'll see the guy, like we've joked about it, the guy doing a sagittal pull down with a D handle.
There's nothing wrong with that. It's a great movement.
Leave him be. Like, it's his fucking, like, do what you want.
I mean, that is a great movement.
It is a great movement, but we're sort of mocking someone for doing it. But you can do it whatever the fuck you want. It's when people like all of a sudden feel the need to put this is my thing, so you should be doing it as well. Like, you see it with a lot of bodybuilders. They'll look at a Gen Pop guy and go, pussy.
Well, we're back to ideology.
Hang on, what? It's because you train that way, doesn't mean he does.
And it's dangerous if you get that opinion in politics, especially. It's like everyone that isn't on my ideology is a moron.
Well, that's where Hitler got to, and it went pretty badly for him. So
yeah. On that note of Hitler,
where are we going to segue into now?
Well, no, we're not.
Just the right time.
We're not segueing actually. Just because I like to end my podcast on a good note. So that's where we're going to end it.
Right.
Because it's been the hour. So we're actually going to wrap it up on Hitler. Well, unless you want to finish on a...
I mean, we can pick something slightly more positive than Hitler, can we?
Oh, maybe something to think about. There's a good philosophical question to think about the part of you that could have been an Auschwitz guard.
What would you have done?
Well, you would have been an Auschwitz guard. All of us would, really.
No, but think about what would you have done? And this is a great, as a philosophical
That's the question.
Yeah. What would you have done? How would you have conducted yourself?
Probably exactly the way that they did, because there's an Auschwitz guard in all of us. And that's the reality of the dark tetrad traits being expressed in every individual.
They did that study where they put people into groups of guards and prisoners.
Yeah,
and when they found the guards, they ended up they were being quite like sadist.
Yeah,
sadist tendencies.
We all like to say, I could never do that, when in reality, all of us have at least, what's that Jordan Peterson quote, isn't it? There's a little bit of Hitler in all of us or something.
Okay, so you've got two wolves inside you.
Still
Which
talking about Hitler?
You've got two wolves inside you. Which like you got the good one, you got the bad one. Which one wins? The one you feed.
I thought you were going to meme yourself there with, I've got two wolves inside me.
That's the thing. It's a.
He'd be posting a picture of Peaky Blinders later.
Look,
like,
me and a lion.
Yeah.
I'm a lion. Yeah. Fuck me.
right, anyway, guys,
On that note,
if you've lasted that long, probably not. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, comment, subscribe. If you're not on the app already, what are you doing? Get on the app. We're throwing out educational videos many times a week. The conversation is always popping on the forums. And as always, our inboxes are always open for anything that we can assist you guys with on our social media. Thanks for watching, guys. Catch you in the next one.